Welcome back to Get the Check. I'm Maya.
I'm Priya.
And today we have an episode with the founder of Pylon, Marty.
Hello. Thanks for having me.
Pylon is a modern support platform for B2B companies. You can track your issues across any channel, Slack, email, Teams even. You can use AI to also automate some tasks, and it's really built in mind for B2B tech companies. We're here with Marty, and first, to start us off, we really want to understand where the inspiration from Pylon came.
Yeah, so taking a step back, like when we started the company, myself, Advith, and Robert, my two co-founders, we actually started not from a place of, we're super passionate about some space. We actually just wanted to build a really big, fast-growing company. We thought the company building itself would be the fun part rather than some sort of passion towards an industry. In order to build something really big, and just to define that in clear terms, $10 billion plus market cap is what we were going for. Mm-hmm. So first off, looking at how do you build a company of that size, we looked at the top 100 software companies in the world that were public. Oh, yeah. And actually it turns out there aren't that many $10 billion plus public companies. There, at the time when we looked, there were only 20 something. Almost all of them are horizontal SaaS products. So products that you can sell to pretty much any company in the world. Things like sales tools, marketing tools, IT tools, customer support tools that you can sell across industries. And so we realized, okay, we probably want to be in a bigger category like that. We wanted to build in horizontal SaaS, and then separately, we thought the fastest growing companies were the ones that latched on to a certain trend that's happening in the world. So we saw through many discovery calls with customer support teams that a lot of B2B companies were moving away from email to shared Slack channels, Microsoft Teams, and these new places for communication.
Is this something that you saw in your personal life as a software engineer at Airbnb?
Not really. So obviously we were familiar with using Slack at work, and that was way easier to use and more fun than email. I'm sure we had vendors who were opening up shared Slack channels at that point, but I didn't see it personally.
Yeah, I was going to say, how does inspiration for a product like that come when you haven't necessarily faced the issue yourself?
So first off, we were in pivot hell for a very long time, and even separately as well. So we're a little over 2 years into Pylon, but in my startup journey, I've been doing startups now for 4.5. And the first couple of years were totally unsuccessful. Nothing happened. When Advith, Robert, and I started working together and we set this goal of building a really big, fast growing company, we decided to focus on one industry, which was post-sales customer support, and then just do blind discovery essentially. And so we started cold DMing people on LinkedIn who had newer types of customer support titles or post-sales roles. And so things like customer success, solutions engineering, support engineers, those were new roles that hadn't existed for that long. And we thought, hey, new role probably means new workflow and something new happening there. So we explored those roles in particular. The way we actually got in touch with those people and learned from them is every day we'd wake up, message 40 people through LinkedIn connection requests, and just said, hey, we're founders who are pivoting. Do you have 15 minutes to chat? Would love to pick your brain on your job. And we would go in totally blind, basically say, what do you do? What do you care about? What does your boss care about? What are metrics that you report on? What are your workflows, et cetera? And eventually we stumbled upon this common trend among the tech companies that we were talking to.
Yeah, that makes sense. Was that something you had done previously as a co-founder, or do you think that was one of the reasons why Pylon really stuck?
Well, we had done the blind experimentation together as a pod of 3. But for the 2 years before, it was more, hey, we generally had an idea and then we let it evolve into things.
Right.
And so no, we had not done the blind experimentation of we know nothing about what you do or your industry.
Let's start at nothing and see where it takes us.
Start basically. At nothing. Yeah. It actually has given me confidence that you can probably just go and figure most things out, most industries out. Luckily in our case, I don't think customer support as a starting point is that complicated to grasp as a core
a technical
workflow
concept.
Exactly. Yeah. Okay. I think healthcare is probably would be a lot harder, but even that, I think you could probably figure it out.
So then you're doing all these interviews. How do you kind of filter through the noise and pick the first thing to make?
So we tried many things. And actually one of the biggest pieces of advice I have for other founders who are in that pivot hell journey is sell before build. You basically want to first prove out, especially in B2B, that there's some willingness to purchase. And it doesn't even have to be the right price. If I'm doing customer discovery with someone and, they're like, oh, I'm super excited about this. This is great. The common question that people want to ask is, would you pay for this? And that's a terrible question. You actually don't learn much because they want to support you. They clearly like gave you some time, and they'll say like, yeah, of course I'd pay for that. The better question to ask is, hey, would you pay $10,000 starting next Tuesday when we're going to have it ready? And then they'll take a step back. They'll be like, oh, like I'm not really sure. It puts like a timeline, money, and suddenly like reality sets in.
And then after you ask those types of questions, what's the kind of conversion rate you see?
We have the idea on like maybe a Sunday night. Advith actually calls up Robert and I. He says, hey, like I think the Slack channel thing could be big. It's really interesting. Like the trend makes sense. And so I actually was living in a hacker house at the time with like 9 other mostly founders. And I hung up the phone after we discussed the idea. I went upstairs and I went over to another founder in the house, co-founder of High Touch, Tejas, and he Series B data platform company. And I asked him, I was like, hey, Tejas, do you guys have this problem? And he's like, Marty, you're not going to believe it, but we both have this problem. And we're looking for a solution right now. And so it was like that fast, like 30 seconds between initial idea, like discovery between us co-founders, and then being able to find someone literally that I lived with who was experiencing the same problem.
At that time, how big was High Touch?
High Touch was Series B, probably like 70 people, something like that.
And then I'm sure they were getting to a number of customers that was not scalable for them anymore.
So this is like the common theme we were seeing was a lot of B2B companies were starting to open up these shared Slack channels, not even just for the support process, but also the sales process too. And then things just move way faster because you've skipped the inbox where a lot of, especially like tech companies don't live. So they had hundreds of those channels. At the same time, they had intercom through kind of for their self-serve customers, but that was like a tiny part of their revenue. Like majority of their revenue and their important customers that they actually cared about were all in shared Slack channels. So they had zero coverage for their important customers and like tracking, response times or assigning things or like, before us, they were like, you would probably like mark things as unread or forward them into channels.
That's what I do right now.
Exactly.
I was going to say, I'm in those internal channels like all day long.
Right.
Yeah.
And
my
then
strategy is to mark as unread.
Yeah, exactly. And so you see it both for internal, but it's even worse if it's for customers, right? Because you like want to respond quickly and it's really screwed up if you don't.
Yeah. Taking it back to your experience in the hacker house, I did want to ask about that briefly because I feel like in SF we hear about them all the time. So what was your experience living there like? It
was great. So I was actually in a hacker house called Mission Control, and it's been around for a long time. I think since, let's see, it was originally a Teal Fellow house after the fellowship, and the house like continued to evolve over time. And yeah, there were some really great people. One of the co-founders of Scale AI, High Touch came out of there. Bun, the guy who started Bun, lived there. Pylon, obviously. So yeah, it's a great place.
That's awesome. Going back to the High Touch example, can you fast forward us to kind of today and how like your product really changed the way they think about customer success? Yeah,
definitely. It's changed a lot. So they went from, intercom for their self-serve customers to all of their important mid-market and enterprise customers through shared Slack channels. And now also they added Microsoft Teams. And so, they went from like zero visibility of important customers and like kind of split place to view conversations happening with both sets of customers to now one unified view in Pylon where they can track everything.
And what was like the first product that you built for them?
So the first product that we built for them, and it was actually the product we stuck with for a year, was actually a like intercom to Slack integration, Zendesk to Slack integration, where, hey, if a customer sends a message into a shared Slack channel, you add a ticket emoji reaction, and that will thread a message saying, hey, a ticket's been opened. And then that makes the ticket in intercom or Zendesk.
It sounds like you had a lot of success from this one integration that you had between Slack and these other systems. So what prompted you to go beyond that and start building new products in addition to that?
Yeah, so the question for us was, how do we become a big company? So the reason we were okay with building this integration to start was we're in a really big industry, and we think that it's like this change is pretty dramatic because what we observed was, hey, you can't track any of your support requests. You also can't track any like product feedback effectively. You have no way to sync activities to your CRM. You can't send marketing blasts or product updates to all of your customers who live in these channels. Like a lot of things were breaking. And so we basically said, this trend's big enough that we should like stick around and explore it. Eventually, we're continuing to like talk to our customers. And by the way, Zendesk, for example, is not talking to their customers at that stage. Yeah. Mm-hmm. And so we're learning from these support leaders and success leaders. They're telling us all the problems they're complaining about their tooling stack, right? They're frustrated with random things, not really telling us to build them. And we started to develop this thesis that actually these other support platforms were not optimizing for B2B companies in particular, which is actually one of the reasons we thought no one had built these omni-channel integrations.
And who would you say are the key people that are using Pylon today?
So we sell to early stage B2B tech companies. And so usually up until around 500 employees. Okay. So we sell to very small companies, like literally YC companies with 3 people. And so in that case, the founders are the ones who are doing all the customer support, all the way up to, hey, VPs of customer support or success, or even solutions teams as well.
I feel like as a PM, I also see the use case for something like that. And so have you explored like product managers using Pylon as well? Yeah.
So one of our big insights was that in B2B versus B2C. So if you look at B2C, there's only one customer facing team, the support team. If you look at B2B, you have customer support, customer success and account management teams, solutions engineering teams, professional services, customer marketing, product as well. All of them interface directly with customers and need access to that data. And so, what they end up doing is they buy a customer support tool, which ends up being like the center of customer data, and then a bunch of adjacent tools. You also buy a customer success platform, you buy like customer marketing platform. Everyone like buys their own tool, and then you stitch it together. And we started to realize, if you were building from scratch for a B2B use case, you actually would involve all of those people in a common CRM, essentially. And so long term, today we're mostly a customer support tool that is kind of more optimized views wise and integrations wise for the B2B segment. But then over time, we're actually increasingly going to eat up these adjacent products and bring them natively into Pylon. And so once we do that, I don't think people will be able to compare us to a Zendesk because we'll just have so much more surface area that B2B teams will grow to expect from a platform like this.
Totally. Yeah. One of the really cool use cases I saw was being able to get insights from customers over time. I think right now, a lot of the times when you get those insights are CSM calls that happen maybe once a quarter, and then you determine the customer health once a quarter at that point. Right. But if you were able to actually go into the tickets that they're filing, you could measure that over time, which for me, I think about would be so valuable for me to have.
Yeah. One thing I was going to say is that as an engineer, you're trying to figure out, hey, what was the success of this one feature, or who's on this feature, or maybe I'm trying to do this migration, or I'm just trying to understand more about this specific account. How do you think about answering those questions in your product?
So we just released something called Ask AI that allows you to just ask freeform questions. So we'll both have like a structured data component, but then also Ask AI allows you to have more of like a ChatGPT style interface where you can just ask anything about any of the data that lives in Pylon. And so, if you are an engineer, if you are a product person, if you're a CSM, all those people do want to access different pieces. So I could ask, hey, like our customer high touch, what do they care about? Or I could ask something more broad, like which customers would be interested in trying out this feature that we're developing.
On the topic of AI, something that I wanted to ask about is I know that you started out with this really solid product that I think comes from being customer obsessed and going deep in discovery when you initially started. And now it seems like you're layering on a lot of AI into your existing products, as well as thinking about it as you build out the future of your products. And so I'm curious why you decided to take that approach and how that's affected the growth of your business.
So we were in the first YC batch after ChatGPT came out. And so as you can imagine, everyone was thinking about AI during that batch. So the most common idea in our YC batch was AI customer support. Everyone was doing it. There were at least 10 companies that we knew personally out of like the 300 who were doing that specific idea. And everyone was asking us, they're like, why are you doing the Slack thing? That's stupid. Like, why don't you do customer support or AI customer support? It seems like a much bigger market, high value. It's like the new thing. And there were a couple problems that we saw with going straight to the AI native route. Intercom, Zendesk, Salesforce, Service Cloud, all of them are going to build AI, for sure. Or and it might take them 3 years, or they'll like buy a solution, but they're gonna do it because it's such a big opportunity. And the question we asked ourselves is like, what do you do once that happens? So let's say you have like really fast growth for the next 3 years. Like what happens when Zendesk just rolls their own AI? we saw even during our own batch, Intercom starts like going really hard on AI. So we thought that it was important to own the platform and the distribution for AI to like be a long-term successful company if we want to get to that $10 billion plus market cap company.
I do think because you have built such strong foundations in the data that you're taking in from all of the customers on these platforms, you're able to build like AI features that much better as prevalent in your AI launch week. So
100%. It's incredible. So, we have obviously the ticketing platform. We have like basic CRM that we're building out. We have our knowledge base and help center. We have a customer portal. When you layer in AI, just like in the middle of that, thinking about the core customer support use cases that people spend a lot of time on, it's crazy. Like it's everything. So just to describe, for example, a sample like philosophical way that support teams run, they operate under what's called like a KCS workflow model. It stands for knowledge-centered service. And the idea is you get customer support requests, you answer them, you turn those into knowledge-based articles, and then that powers either AI responses in the future or helps people self-serve questions. And so we can take this model and make it like super AI powered because we control all parts of this flow. So you go from, hey, we have to go do manual work to figure out what our common questions are. That used to be a thing people do before Pylon. Now they don't have to. Then you have to go write the article with us. You click AI, let AI draft the article for you based on all the work you've done giving responses in the past. You can also do it into a templated format, so the quality is higher. It's almost impossible to unsee it once you see it the first time.
Yeah.
No, that's so powerful. I know I often get the same question asked over and over again about a specific part of the product that I own. And I have Jira canned responses that are ready to go because I already know the questions that I'm going to get. And so with a tool like that, if I answer it one time, then it's in this knowledge base. You can not only create an article, but you can also make sure you're responding to whoever you might need to as fast as possible.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
And it could be, hey, like you manually reference the article, or if you layer in just like the typical what we call conversational agents, the AI bots, then it can also just use that knowledge to answer the next time.
Yeah, I was going to say like with our platform, like I'm at Paraffin and it's a highly integrated platform because it's embedded finance. And the biggest time we spend on with each account is just education. It's like education over and over again. So you can see how something like this is really useful.
100%. And it's crazy. It's not only we're finding like we built this, we call it knowledge gaps for the purpose of figuring out what to write content about, but we're also finding it's just really good for surfacing product changes that need to happen. So yeah, I think we're going to go much deeper into that as well.
Yeah, that totally makes sense why someone would use that platform. I think I would definitely be happy to use a platform like Pylon. I also wanted to talk about your sales because I know something that you've talked about is leading a lot of the sales yourself, especially at the beginning and even closing like 30 deals in a month. So wanted to talk a little bit more about B2B sales in specific, how that differs from other spaces and what your strategy is when it comes to selling the product.
Yep. The first sale was I went upstairs and talked to my roommate.
Right.
The second sale was my co-founder, Advith. Someone had tried to recruit him to work at their startup, a startup called Causal. And when we were trying to find more people who had this problem, he reached back out to Lucas, the CTO of Causal, and they had that problem. Then the third customer ended up being Robert, my third co-founder. He used to work with the founder of One Schema. So they used to work at Affinity together. And so once again, as we were reaching out into our network to try to find more people who have this problem, they ended up being our third customer. So it was like very in network for those first three. And then from that point, the next probably like 7 were all LinkedIn cold DMs. And that was just a natural path for us because that's where we discovered the problem. And like something YC would tell you is that you should know where your customers are. You should know where at least like a couple customers are because where else did you get the idea? And we got the idea from LinkedIn.
And another thing I'm curious about is what do you think the biggest edge over your competitors today is?
So it depends on who you compare us to.
Okay.
So the company that we go up against most is Zendesk. So they are the incumbent in the space, especially in tech generally. And the great news and the reason they're so weak is they were acquired by private equity a little over 2 years ago now. They were actually acquired by PE one day after we had the idea. So like the timing is insane. And like we didn't know at the time that was relevant for us or like important. We weren't thinking about it. But it was such great timing because at the time when, the PE firms starting to actually integrate and like make changes and like, layoffs and pricing increases, all this stuff. And so we saw the perception change over time. And so yeah, for a lot of our customers, they actually just want to do Slack support or Microsoft Teams support, and Zendesk, Intercom, Salesforce Service Cloud. None of the incumbents support it.
Oh, wow.
Like they literally that's just not an option. So if you do Slack support, you just can't use those tools. And so like all of their support was happening in one place, like these new channels. And then they had this ticketing system that literally just does not ingest any of that.
Oh, wow.
So it's like a pretty obvious choice for people like that. Yeah. And it was a little hard for people to trust this early on. And it's hard to entrust your core system of record to a seed stage company, especially if you're bigger. So we're super proud of like the logos that we did end up getting during that time. Like Applied Intuition is one we're super proud of.
That's awesome.
Series F company now.
Yeah.
They were Series E at the time, 500 employees. And, they churned off of Zendesk.
So with all those great logos, what is one of your favorite customer success stories, and how much time have they saved from your platform? And what are the metrics you guys track?
It's so funny because I really wish I had a better answer here that was more metrics driven, but literally the example I just gave of AnyScale or Applied Intuition in this case, they had zero tracking. So it's like Stone Age. Like it's basically like you're doing pen and paper. Basically that's what they had with Zendesk to, okay, now it's tracked. So it's you can't even, it's like, okay, now they have 100% tracking and before they had 0% tracking. It's like almost
That's
like a hard.
that the alternative was using something like that before.
It's crazy. Some people would like try to spin up like their own integrations and build it themselves. There were some like startups who were trying to do the integrations, but it was never great.
That's what we do.
Yeah. Well, there we go.
I was
Okay, so
gonna
you
say
should, by the way, you should start using Pylon.
No, I was going to say the same thing internally. I mean, I'm not on the engineering side, but we also have built our own integrations to what it sounds like exactly like what you guys do.
No, it's crazy. And obviously it's never going to be optimized. There's clearly a better way. And so it's the case studies, it's almost like weird to say because it just sounds stupid. Like if we try to put a number to it, it's like there was nothing and now there's something. Like now it's tracked. It wasn't tracked before. So like I guess some things that I could mention that are kind of cool are we did a state of Slack support report for 2024 and basically looked at our top 100 Slack support power users and they between themselves I think had like 16,000 shared Slack channels that they were managing through Pylon, and we abstract it to make it really easy to just track all of those across hundreds of channels. In our case, we have over 1,000 shared Slack channels with prospects and customers.
Totally. Yeah, it's clear that there's so many challenges in this world that you've already started solving and are continuing to solve. I'm curious what the major challenges in this space are that you think are still unsolved, and if there's any plans to go into them.
One is in AI. So AI actually has to look quite different for B2B than it does B2C. So the obvious like B2C customer support, like AI use case is, hey, you have a lot of like tickets that you kind of deflect away. The reason that's easier to do in consumer is because a high percentage of your volume are simple tickets. Think like cancel, refund, like change address, stuff like that. Very transactional, and like a high volume, like let's say like 80% of your questions are 8 types of questions. And so you can like optimize for those. For B2B, that's kind of flipped where maybe 20% of your questions are like more simple product questions and 80% are like really complicated. And then also on top of that, you actually care about the relationship. And so you care about accuracy way more. You don't want it to say something stupid. You'd much rather have human in the loop to like make sure it's correct and you're not saying something incorrect. And so a lot of the AI that's going to have to come out, in our opinion, should be more human in the loop oriented, where it's helping people just operate faster, but the actual customer communication is still led by people.
That's so interesting that you say that, because we had a company hackathon and one of the projects was building an AI support bot for our partners. And the first question that was asked was, is it human in the loop? And it's crazy because that was a project born out of the company. And so it's clear that that's like so front and center to B2B support.
Yeah, 100%. And also it is really interesting, this trend. So we see a lot, only in tech that a lot of companies really want to roll their own AI and like build it out because they're excited about it and they think they can do a better job. In some cases they can, but it is a heavy investment. Basically, the common theme we see is the companies that usually try, they'll like put someone on it for a hackathon or like for like a month and be like, okay, go figure it out. It'll be like kind of subpar. And then they'll be like, okay, like why did we spend time doing this when there are tools that we can just use instead?
Yeah, I can say that project hasn't been shipped. It was just for a hackathon. I wanted to ask also, what are your internal KPIs at Pylon itself? How do you track like the success of your accounts and how do you prioritize what to build next?
So we are very long-term thinkers generally. So what's most important is how do we become a $10 billion plus company in a short period of time? So let's say like 5 to 7 years. Right after that is then revenue. So, hey, are we growing at, I won't say our exact revenue, but, millions in ARR. And we're at the point where we should be growing minimum 3x year over year. And so we do a monthly cadence for revenue reporting. So we need to grow at least 9.6% month over month. We're growing much faster than that, but that is like the minimum bar. And so team wise, we're, orienting around that number saying, hey, this is the minimum bar. Let's make sure we hit that for the year.
And then how do you walk that back? Like going from a revenue number back to, your inputs of what do you build? Like how do you figure out what to build? Because sometimes the picture isn't so clear.
Totally. So the thing is we're moving from smaller companies and moving up market. And so there's a combination of forward-looking product that we need to build out and then like current needs of either like prospects or customers. We tend to be more oriented towards what existing customers want. So there's a portion of work that is just like gap filling essentially. And then there's more of the forward-looking stuff that no one's thinking about, but we've just determined, hey, this is like a really cool bet that we should make and invest into. For example, like no one was asking us, oh, can you like make a ChatGPT interface to ask questions about our customer data? Like no one had ever asked us that, but we said, hey, like if our long-term vision is to be this like data store for all of your customer information, then that's probably useful. You probably do want to be able to ask free-form questions about that. So, I mean, it's a combination of, I guess, the gap filling and like just enterprisey features as customers demand them and grow with the more forward-looking ones.
In terms of your pricing structure right now, is it just like a flat fee to use all of the different features across your product, or do you have any like tiering right now? I'm just curious.
Great question. So over time, we've shifted our pricing model at least like 8 times. Okay. And so it's like we started with seats, then we went to number of Slack channels that you had with customers, and then we added email support. So we're like, okay, wait, that doesn't make sense anymore. Yeah. So we then went back to like 1 tier of seats, then we had 2 tiers of seats, then we had 3, and then now we're also layering in AI pricing as well, as we're like bundling that in.
Okay, so it's pay by usage, not by like the flat fee of just using the AI agent itself.
So yeah, for the agents itself that like answer questions or like perform actions on like some section of tickets, that is credit based and usage based. And then we'll sell, people want predictable cost. And so we'll sell like a bucket of credits essentially that they would use.
So to build such a strong product, especially at such an early stage, hiring the right talent is super important. And so I'm curious to hear kind of what the process looks like, if there's anything in particular you're looking for and what your general hiring philosophy looks like.
So I'll say my co-founder Advith is a god at hiring. Okay. And, we're lucky. So 3 of us come from engineering backgrounds, and he in particular has been able to grab a bunch of ex-coworkers from Samsara, where he used to work. And so probably like half of our team is from Samsara. And so people who saw like a fast growing company, and also they were known for really technical excellence. And so we've managed to grab a lot of those people, bring them to Pylon. They're not actually like the typical profile you'd think for founding engineers, but it's worked really well for us. Most of our hiring that's been successful has been in network. Yeah. And so we're just, seeing, hey, who do we know? And let's just try to convince them to come. And so that's worked especially well. I recommend anyone who has a network, you should be leveraging that first and foremost. And also you probably want to work with people you like and who have worked with you well in the past. And so if you can do that, I think that's the move.
What's something that you often look for in your candidates too?
So I'll say like on the go-to-market side, when I'm looking at AEs, but we're hiring more if anyone is looking for a job, I'll do like a 15-minute screen. In that specific position, I'll ask myself 3 questions. I'll say, does this person come off as really smart, just like right off the bat? And when you're in sales, you like impression matters.
Yeah.
Totally.
2 is, hey, is this person going to work their ass off? And then 3 is, would I buy from this person? Like
Yeah.
that. And so
Do I want to give them my money?
right, exactly. And quite literally, right? So those are the 3 questions that we might ask for that type of role. For marketing, for example, it's going to be completely different. I was looking specifically for like an engine builder is how I would describe it. And it's funny, the person who we ended up hiring, Richard, like I wanted someone to be able to architect systems and like kind of get into the weeds and like understand the details. And we were walking by like a bunch of board games that we have in our office. And he was like, oh, I love board games, blah, blah, blah. I was like, oh, what's your favorite one? And he was like, Terraforming Mars. And I'm like, okay, this guy is probably like this is definitely an engine builder and that type of persona. On the engineering front, it's really just, you have to be a great engineer and frankly, just like general culture fit. I think the culture fit piece is you're like high energy, work is an important part of your life. I say like another way that we describe our engineers are like happy grinders. Like that's kind of like the profile.
And how do you kind of test for that engineering excellence when you're looking at your engineers?
I mean, so the biggest thing is still going to be references.
Okay.
So like you just ask people that they've worked with, and ideally if they're in network, you can like ask people they don't send to you. And like they'll tell you, right? They'll be like, this person's good or they're bad.
Yeah.
Okay.
And so that is the best filter.
Everyone has a reputation.
Yeah, everyone has a reputation, and like they already basically have interviewed for the job at that point. So like our like second and I guess first, second, third engineer, fourth engineer as well. Like I don't think we really did any technical interview.
Oh wow.
I think we just knew they were good. They had
were
like
excellent,
a good
yeah.
reputation. Like Jesse, our second engineer, everyone just knew he was a beast.
Yeah. And then once you get that top talent, how do you retain that talent?
You keep doing well as a company. That's really the only way. And then also, if the company is doing well, that can cover most sins. Even if you're doing like really well and the culture sucks, like you'll probably stay.
Yeah.
So I think most important is just do well. The other thing is because we have so many people who came in through network, they just have more fun. Everyone like similar vibe, and it's definitely fun to be there. We're 5 days a week in person in SF, 23 people now. And so everyone is, we eat lunch together. Like we talk about our weekends.
Yeah, I think that in-person culture is so important.
It is so
you have
important.
that.
Yeah, I work 3 days a week, sometimes 4 in person, and I think like that is like has contributed to like the success and the culture of the company. It's like people want to work with people that you're friends with, that you can like just
Totally.
gossip with too.
Also, the other thing so we're starting new grad hiring as well. And I can't imagine being a new grad that's not in person.
Yeah.
Like,
Yeah.
wouldn't that
Yeah.
suck? Like, how are you going to learn anything?
No, it did suck.
It did, I was going to
Okay, did
say, I
both
was
of you?
also
Okay.
a new grad.
did
Yeah.
suck.
No, that would be terrible. So we also, I don't know, maybe we're like the old guard of SF. Like we got to be new grads right before the pandemic. So I graduated in 2018, worked at Airbnb, also like went through the whole like internship cycle in
Yeah.
San Francisco. And that was so fun. Like there are all these interns everywhere. Like everyone's getting paid too much money. Like
Yeah.
they're like intern events all the time.
They're all in intern housing together.
Yeah, exactly.
They're like friend groups. I've found so many happy couples from these things too.
No, it sounds
Totally.
so fun. And
Yeah.
I didn't have a single internship in person because it was all COVID.
I'm so sorry. Like we definitely want to be part of the change that brings that back. And the one way we're also thinking about hiring is we've created a really great foundation of design patterns. And this is something that they learned at Samsara. Basically, they had senior and staff engineers build out really good design patterns and foundations. And then you bring in new grads who are just going to grind really hard. And they just like copy paste a lot of times to like build out whatever features. And it's hard for them to screw up the core thing once you've already built like a really solid thing for them to work off of.
SF is so back.
SF is back. SF is back. I actually think it's better than it was before. I really like startup people. I really like founders. And I think the COVID was really like a cleansing of people who just didn't care. Mm-hmm. They were just here for the money and that's it. Mm-hmm. And then they're like, oh, I just like want to optimize for, I know my hobbies or something.
Yeah.
And that's fine. Like people should do that and that's totally okay.
Yeah.
But for me, it's like cool if there's high density of people. Like what makes SF so unique compared to other places is this like density of really smart and ambitious people and culture that supports, doing really big things. And so that's what I really lean into. And it does feel like also, thank God for AI. AI like brought back so many companies and there's so much activity and so many successful companies popping up now, where I think that'll fully replace, frankly, like all the SaaS companies who left or, went remote.
Yeah. I was going to say both of us were in Seattle, which is a pretty tech-centric city, but it's not like the startup tech-centric city.
Exactly.
It's like I work for Microsoft, Amazon.
No, literally, I used to work for Microsoft, and every single time Maya and I would go to any party, they were like, Microsoft or Amazon?
Yeah.
I would not be able to stand that.
No, it was tough. We got out fast.
Yeah. We got out in like 5 months.
Well, it's so funny. Like, I love the tech roast guys because they like make fun of like that persona all the time. I feel like it's okay to have a personality that revolves around your startup because at least you're like trying to do something new.
Yeah.
But I feel like if your personality revolves around working at Microsoft, that it's just not cool.
Yeah.
It's just really not interesting.
So I noticed on LinkedIn a story that went viral is that you guys raised a Series A in under 14 days. Congratulations, first of all.
Thank you.
But also want to hear more about that and what it was like doing that.
So fundraising has been really easy for us. And I think the reason is we just have focused on trying to be a big, fast-growing company, right? Then how you explain the company to investors makes a lot of sense versus you like work backwards where, we like found an idea and then we have to put the puzzle pieces together on how it becomes big. We didn't really have to do that. And so the Series A, typical benchmark for when someone might go and start fundraising is usually like $1 million ARR. We were actually, didn't have $1 million ARR at that point. One of our angel investors who had access to our monthly investor updates that we would send knew exactly what we were building and was really excited about us and had seen us during the seed but didn't have a chance to invest properly. And so they basically preempted us and said, we want to be involved. We had raised 3.3 million at that point, and we had 3 million in the bank. So we basically hadn't burned anything. We were being hyper efficient, paying ourselves like nothing, living in our office. And we asked ourselves the question of, so first off, do we want to raise an A eventually? The answer was yes. And then 2 was, will we get better terms if we wait? And so, hey, let's say we want to wait like 3 or 4 months. And the answer was no. Basically, we'll get good terms right now. This is a really good fund. If we do want to do a Series A fundraising process, we should do it opportunistically because there's this opportunity like in our laps.
Presented to us, yeah.
Exactly. So we reached out to partners that we had already spoken to, people who had inbounded us that we were vaguely interested in. I'll spoil the story. We end up raising 17 million from Andreessen.
Oh, wow. And
so Jennifer, I had known her socially for quite a long time. So she actually was part of this Kleiner Perkins fellowship thing that me and my 2 co-founders did. And I reached out to her. I'm like, hey, we should chat. And I was like, we're not fundraising, but like potentially, like if you wanted to be involved, you might have to figure that out soon.
Yeah.
And so basically said that in kind of like a non-committal way because we didn't want to get rejected. We didn't want to say we're fundraising and get rejected because that's stupid. If you don't need the money and you get rejected, like that would suck. Basically kind of played this game of you should do your due diligence now. And so the interest started to boil. We also had one of our previous investors, David Onchoko from Comma Capital, which is this really great, primarily seed stage fund. It's great if you can have a person who's kind of in between yourself and all the investors and can kind of like give each side information.
Yeah.
And so for example, if we have a term sheet from someone, if you want to play the game perfectly, you don't want to go straight to the investors and be like, here's my term sheet, like give us something better.
Yeah.
You want to tell your in between to go tell the investor, hey, they have a term sheet, like you need to hurry up.
Yeah.
That's like the best
your
thing
liaison.
to do.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So David played that role super well. So he helped kind of shepherd information for both sides. And so we have these like quick conversations. We're like moving through the process. And like a week after the like initial conversation, we now are, it's like coming into Monday and we have 3 partner meetings scheduled. And so, we Uber down to Menlo Park and we go to Andreessen's office first. And it's like this big like boardroom with like 25 people in there. I had made the deck the day before. So it's like Sunday, I'm like scrambling to like put all the, again, like all the work we had already done, trying to figure out where we want to go and just putting it on paper.
Yeah.
And so, we just told the story. And so it just is a very simple story that it's like, okay, seems like a pretty good bet. Like they're in a horizontal SaaS category. There's a really good team. They're growing really fast. They have good like previous investors. Like there wasn't like we just gave very few reasons to say no.
Yeah.
Because it just makes sense.
Yeah. It's also just an easy product to understand.
And also what was interesting, so meanwhile, there are all these AI companies who are able to raise Series A's. Actually, B2B SaaS companies were struggling to raise A's at that time. And so we were actually like a breath of fresh air for these funds who actually are trying to deploy capital into SaaS companies, or specifically like, application SaaS is what they would call it. And there aren't many companies to invest into because everyone's focused on AI. So actually, in some ways, we kind of benefited, and we've benefited in many ways from that, of like being focused on something that's not the hype thing, while still having like clearly a successful potential path in future.
Yeah.
That's really interesting because I feel like whenever I hear about VC funding, you always hear about AI. So it's interesting to hear that perspective from you as well.
Yeah, for sure. And we tried to make it pretty clear that AI is not the focus right now. And like the insight we had was that B2B was having its omni-channel moment.
Yeah.
And so we stressed that, and we're like, look, we have revenue for that. They talk to, 1 million of our customers. And yeah, everyone kind of saw that, right? So the writing's on the wall, and we started to, and even since then, it's become more and more clear like where we need to go, and that actually AI isn't necessarily still like the big thing. It's like shiny and will accelerate us even faster and make the product even more valuable. But frankly, like even if we had no AI, the product would still be really valuable.
Yeah, totally.
That's a great note to end on. We've really enjoyed having you today, Marty. Pylon seems to be growing really fast, solving a key point of frustration across the entire industry of B2B. And we can't wait to see where Pylon goes with this and how you guys continue to evolve. So yeah, thank you.
Yeah, it's been awesome chatting.
Thank you so much. This was fun.
This was fun. Thank you. Bye.